So good evening everyone and welcome to today's session of Saturday Talk. We are privileged to have Sri Chaitanya Giri today for this Saturday Talk session. Chaitanya Giri is an associate professor environmental sciences at Flame University. Chaitanya's research interest travels between analytical astrochemistry and planetary science. For his PhD, he received the prestigious 2014 Dieter Ramprechter Prize from the Max Planck Society, Germany. Since year 2021, he has been a space diplomacy consultant at the Research and Information Systems for Developing Countries, that is RIS. He was a committee member of the International Cooperation Review of the Ministry of Science and Technology and the Ministry of Earth Sciences. He sits on the advisory board of Satcom Industry Association India and is a member of Nitya Committee on Space Economy and is a nominated senior member of University of Mumbai. He regularly speaks at public fora and teaches at various domestic and international institutions. Today he is going to speak on the topic that is technological ramifications after general election year 2024. Chaitanya ji, over to you from here.
So firstly, thank you very much Rajesh ji for that really elongated introduction. I've been regular at the JanyuTech Saturday Talks. All thanks to Abhimanyu ji, Rajesh ji, Sai Hemant and the entire team, Bhushan ji. And it's always a pleasure to come and interact with you all on myriad topics, as well as get to listen to a lot of people around. So firstly, let me thank you all for inviting me once again. Today's topic has come at a very pertinent time. I've been just following the dates of elections that have been announced, the 7-phase elections. It is said both by the Election Commission of India and as well as by the political parties that this is the biggest festival of democracy. But for us, we celebrate it because India is a very, we take keen interest in our festivals, in our celebrations. For us, life is a celebration. But this is a very challenging year, not just from the point of view Indian elections that we are going to choose the next government for the next 5 years or so. The previous 5 years have been really troubling for us. We've come out of a major global pandemic, a once in a century pandemic, and it becomes very important for us to take a lot of learnings that we've had all these 5 years and take them into the next 5 as we proceed. Having said that, it becomes very important for us to understand that there are nearly 77 countries all across the world who are having some sort of subnational or national elections happening, right from the United States to Europe, to South Asia, Central Asia. There are elections happening even in Russia at this point in time, then in Africa, South America, so on and so forth. What this means is there is a lot of political churn happening, and there are, of course, two opposing forces all across the planet. One, the conservative forces, and one are the communist forces, who are right now battling with each other on an electoral battleground. But what is of great importance here is that all these elections are happening simultaneously, and perhaps there are forces that are wanting to have one kind of government to come in all these countries. Governments that are in tune with each other in terms of agenda, governments that are very much wanting to cooperate with each other in establishing that agenda. And unfortunately, some of these agendas or some of these concepts that they are wanting to bring into the picture or bring to forth may or may not be in the greater interest of the people that they serve. What I'm hinting at is certain globalist forces that are wanting to take charge of numerous governments, especially of very strategically important countries. And they are wanting to ensure that the agendas that they set for the world, which may not be, again, in the interest of the people that they serve, to come to the fore, to be implemented. And all these agendas perhaps have some element of technology in it. Now, we've come to a certain point in our history, in modern history, where global corporations have grown to such a big stature, especially technology corporations, that they run parallel governments in the countries that they live in. So, for example, I'll give you some 5-6 years ago, the Department of Defense of United States, Pentagon, had inquired or had put up a requisition in their ecosystem, in the defense innovation ecosystem in the United States, to come up with certain kind of solutions that the Pentagon was needing at that point in time. And large companies like Google were, confident enough to say no to Pentagon. So rather than pulling out, rather than not participating, choosing to not participate in the competition, Google came up with a really formal response that they are not going to participate in the requisitions that the Pentagon has put up for the US defense ecosystem. Now, this is a sign of challenging the order, challenging the government that has been democratically or non-democratically put up in place. And this kind of heft for any technology firm or any firm, private sector firm, comes when it has a really high stake in the government where they reside, in the country of their residence, or this is a company that has too much to offer to the government where they reside. So it could be the government of United States or any other government where Google is currently operational. And it is due to these kind of shenanigans that the Chinese 6 years ago, 7 years ago decided that they are not going to, somewhere around 2016-17, they decided that they're not going to let the American tech ecosystem use, and they will definitely put up the Chinese alternatives to these companies and make sure that the Chinese government is not challenged by companies that have their own geostrategic whims and fancies. Now, what is in it for us? In the next 5 years or so, and of course, it will all depend on the government that will come, the Prime Minister that we choose, the Lok Sabha candidates that we choose. All that will matter for India when India is projected or forecasted to grow by $1 trillion GDP addition every year. So this is going to happen very soon, and especially for that, this particular tenure from 2024 to 29 becomes very crucial, because that is when we are going to have a compounding return in terms of the GDP growth that India is forecasted. Now, these forecasts are not internal forecasts. These are not political gimmicks. These are not electoral manifestos, but these are forecasts that various international agencies have made for us. So right from the International Monetary Fund to the World Bank to OECD to the World Economic Forum, all of them. So they all project that India is going to grow tremendously in the next 5 to 10 years. And the catapult is going to happen in this particular term. So right from 2024 to 2029. And that's why the title of this talk is the techno-political ramifications of the general elections that are about to happen. Now, when I say techno-political ramifications, let us look at the wide horizon that India is going to assert its leadership, and across the horizon where India, while it asserts its leadership, is also going to get challenged. So the number one assertion of India, especially after the last pandemic, has been the vaccine diplomacy that we have engaged in. In these 5 years, in the previous 5 years, what we noticed, especially after January, February of March 2020 was that when the world was reeling under the pandemic, when the world was yearning for vaccines and certain kind of antidotes to the really virulent virus, there were pharmaceutical companies all across the world that were engaging in arm twisting. So for vaccines, for free supply of vaccines, these companies were asking for access to certain strategic installations in these countries. So countries in South America were asked to give away some of their air bases, strategic air bases of their air forces. They were asked to give away certain strategic national installations, which have nothing to do with the pharmaceutical sector. So vaccines against air bases, vaccine against naval bases, vaccines against strategic governmental installation, something is amiss. And while this happened, of course, countries were smart enough to deny. None of these countries readily gave away their assets, their governmental assets or their military assets. But that is where India came to the picture, despite the great opposition and the great upheaval and the great derision that took place when India said that, okay, we are going to make our own vaccines. We are going to manufacture vaccines in large numbers and supply to the world. So initially, if you remember the months of 2020, 2021, there were quite a few lobbies that were very much happy to pull us down, to deride us, to deride the efforts. And we all saw that happening in front of our eyes on the television sets, in the newspapers, on social media while it was happening. And it was nothing but really awful of them to do so. Eventually, what we did was we supplied vaccines to more than 88, 89, 90 countries. Most of these countries were given vaccines in the form of development cooperation. There was no money asked as such initially. And then after a certain point of time, India just gave it away as part of our goodwill, of our international goodwill. Yes, we are here to garner goodwill. We need that goodwill because as India grows, as the world becomes much more, it gets fed up with the acrimonious competition, bipolar competition between US and Russia or US and China, or the West and Russia and West and China. They would want third alternative, which is a more calming, a more soothing alternative, and India is wanting to become that. So the vaccine diplomacy is, for the want of a better word, a masterstroke by India. It has given us tremendous leeways in countries, more than what we can imagine at this point in time. So it is not that our goodwill has ended with giving away the vaccine. The world is now returning back to us and asking, okay, we've seen you deliver in times of crisis. We've seen you deliver to the world when the superpowers were not ready to play the role that they should. Superpowers should play the role that they can, but it is you who came to the fore. What else do you have to achieve? And this has led to quite a inquisitiveness about India's manufacturing prowess, India's production and services related to prowess. And this is where India must be now working on. And the $1 trillion addition to the economy every year or every 1.5 years that I am talking about will all come from the goodwill that has been generated in Africa, in South America, especially in the global South. Next thing to happen, very important, was to bring African Union into the G20. So as we all know, we saw some of our billboards painted, the walls painted all across our cities about G20. We celebrated G20 like any other festival, in a great festive spirit that we are known for as a country, as a civilization. And while we celebrated the G20, there was a very strong agenda that the government was carrying in its heart. Number one, they did not want to showcase just New Delhi, just the corridors of New Delhi. They wanted the world, they wanted the delegates, and not just the delegates, not just the ministers, but there were quite a few delegates that visited India who were part of the civil society groups under the C20, the Civil Society 20, under B20, the Business 20, under the T20, the Think 20, then under Space Economy Leaders Meeting, which is also known as the Space 20, where all the space agencies of the world, their leaders gathered in Shillong, in Meghalaya, as well as in Bangalore. Then there was Youth 20, when a lot of youth societies of all these 20 countries were mobilized. And when all these delegates came and visited more than 50 cities of India, cities and towns of India, they saw the great potential that our country has. And there was immense amount of track 2 or track 1.5 diplomacy that happened while all these delegates visited our academic institutions, they visited our think tanks, they visited our business chambers, they visited our state government institutions, they visited central government institutions, some of them visited our not-for-profit institutions. There was a lot of exchange. There was a lot of exchange of ideas. And since the agenda that we had set for all these engagement groups of the G20 were truly Indian, I must also make here a point that the secretariat of C20, which is the Civil Society 20, was given to an institution which is very close to JanyuTech geographically, and that is the Rambhau Margi Prabodhini, which is very much close to Vasai in Uttan, in Bhayandar. Whereas the president of C20 was Mata Amritanandamayi, our very own Amma. So nobody could have thought that India would give charge of its civil society leadership during the G20 to a spiritual guru. So we played our cards very well during this G20, and we started the year. We started the 2023. The first major diplomatic event of 2023 was multilateral dialogue with the African Union, where we said that, as well as with the countries of the global South, where we said that India is the voice of the global South. So whatever technologies that are generated here, built here, technologies that are tested here on field, or maybe in the commercial domain, in whatever form they are deployed, if they are deployed here, they can easily be operated in Africa or in South America, in Central Asia, in Oceania region, in Southeast Asia. And that gave these countries some element of confidence that yes, truly Indian technologies are cost effective. We can easily buy them. India is not going to lend these technologies to us under really dreadful loans that China does. China is known for. And India is not going to ask for the strategic assets of these countries while giving away these technologies. So this is the kind of confidence that India has built between 2019 and 2024. And again, this confidence about India will only grow as our Make in India, our Atmanirbhar Bharat programs all across sectors will come to fruition as we proceed in these years. If you see some of the state governments and the initiatives that they are leading, especially Maharashtra for that matter, or Gujarat for that matter, there are, and Uttar Pradesh of course, there are investments coming to the tune of many tens of thousands of dollars into these states. All this is happening because of the greenfield infrastructure that India is building in the form of the numerous high-speed, semi-high-speed rails, Vande Bharat rails, the high-speed rail that is coming up, which will be passing again through via Vasai, Virar region. Then there is immense span of expressways that are being built, and there is a concerted effort going on to start populating our tier 2 and tier 3 cities with all the amenities that any metro city boasts of. So if you see a city like Mumbai, which had only a 11-kilometer long metro rail between 2011 and let's say 2022, Mumbai will go to have nearly 200 kilometers of metro rail in the next 5 to 6 years, assuming all the all the 11 metro lines become operational. But a city like Indore, a city like Agra, a city like Nashik in the coming future, all these have been known as tier 2 or tier 3 cities of our Indian landscape, and they now have amenities that has with a better standard of living, a lower cost of living, and of course with all the amenities and jobs that one could think of. So all the investments that these states are boasting of, these investments are not only going to their capital cities or the second capital city, but they're going to their tier 2 and tier 3 cities, making them more livable. We also see that in the next 5 years or so, we will be completing the total electrification of Indian villages. We'll be seeing total deep penetration of digital connectivity in our hinterlands, including deep penetration into the desert region in the Himalayan tracts, into the forest of Jharkhand, Odisha, or eastern Maharashtra. And this is only going to benefit in a way that this will create new jobs. And what sort of jobs are we trying to create? Of course, there is a lot to be built, so there will be numerous laborious tasks around. But yes, this government will be again ruling over a population which is more than 65% under the age of 40, and it's an aspirational population, and this aspirational population needs aspirational jobs. So that's the reason why you see a great amount of investments in high-tech areas. So just go back into 2018, 2019 and fast forward yourself and compare the space sector what it was in 2018 and compare the space sector as it is now. The space sector now boasts of numerous startups that are picking up money from the Indian FIIs, DIIs, domestic institutional investors and venture capital firms. Indian space companies are now also eligible to pick up FIIs, money from FIIs, which is the foreign institutional investors. And we have the FDI now open in the space sector, where for non-strategic components, subcomponents, subsystems, systems, the FDI is up to 100%. Whereas as we move towards strategic systems like launch vehicles and large satellites, the FDI is up to 49%. So India knows that as the Western economy, especially the American economy and European economy, undergoes severe turbulence in the next 5 years, there will be a lot of capital flight that will happen from these zones, these regions of the world. And this is no less capital flight. These are the two regions that have ruled over the global economics for the past 300, 400 years. So the capital flight that may happen from these regions will be massive. I must also mention here that during the previous year's presidency of G20, India committed to the world a new multilateral, a new energy multilateral, which is known as the Global Biofuels Alliance. This is again an effort for India to diversify its energy budget, and it's also a message to the world that the world need not the world so the world need not. Okay, can I request somebody to close the mic?
Yeah. Please, viewers are requested to keep the audio on chat mode, please. Ushan, you can mute everyone else other than Chaitanya ji.
Yeah. Thank you, Rajesh ji. So we are also looking at the fact that the world should not be over-dependent on one kind of energy resource, and the energy hegemony that global politics has seen due to dominance of petroleum and the emergence of something known as the petrodollar that need not be repeated. And that's why diversification of energy sources is not only important for India but for the entire world. And dismantling of the petroleum dominance is something that has already happened. The world is now smoothly moving towards clean fuels, clean energy. Yet at the same time, we do not want to create an alternative to petroleum, but multiple alternatives to petroleum. And in this regard, India's leadership of the Global Biofuels Alliance is of great significance. So, keeping all these in mind, since I just have another 15 minutes or so to conclude on this particular talk, let me put forth what is going to happen next in the 5 years and what are the ramifications of this election. So not going into the politics of it, of course, there are great many chances that we will continue to have the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi between 2024 and 2029. And during this period, India will have to ensure three things. Number one, we'll have to ensure that there is deeper penetration of the concept of Atmanirbharata in not only the governmental jargon or in the governmental manifestos or documents, but Atmanirbharata will have to percolate into the Indian thought process. Number two is, while we talk about Atmanirbharata, we are not supposed to go into a protectionist mode. We will have to reach out to the entire global south to whom we have committed that we are their voice. So whatever solutions, whatever tech solutions that you may find as a company or as an innovator or as an industrialist, please ensure that you not only view a domestic market, or not only have a domestic market in mind for your product, but also take your product international. So that becomes very important. And when I say international, don't just look at Europe, don't just look at United States or any of the developed economies of the world. Look at the developing economies of the world and try to make some headways into these countries. These countries are difficult to get into. These are unregulated, uncharted markets. The rule of law in many of the countries might not be operating in a full-fledged manner. But these are the countries who are wanting to get out of turmoil, and a turmoil that has lasted for them really long. They might have got independence many, many years ago, many decades ago, but they haven't seen the growth trajectory that India has seen. And if you talk to any government official or any sane thinking, fertile mind coming out of these countries, they'll only say that they look at India with great amount of admiration and awe, and they want to emulate what India has done. Now, most of these countries, especially those in Africa, are mired by conflict, mired by sectarian conflict that is fueled by global players who do not want these countries to remain stable, global players who may have given these countries political independence per se, as a matter of fact, but in spirit, these countries and the political class, the parties, or the bahubalis that reside in them, they are yet not completely autonomous. They still have masters located beyond their borders, their jurisdiction borders. And that is the reason why we must enter these countries, of course, enter into businesses, of course, but with great amount of caution. And I must tell you that over the past 5 years, I've been privy to some of the Indian government initiatives where we have identified which are the sectors that could go and sort of serve these countries through commercial routes. India, especially in the defense domain, India has a $1 billion plus line of credit for defense cooperation. And when we talk about line of credit, the entities that are going to benefit and entities that are going to penetrate are, of course, Indian companies. So it becomes very important for you all to leverage this particular opportunity wherever a defense line of credit lies. Beyond defense line of credits, there are quite a few development cooperation line of credits. Again, over there, the element of technology is very much important, and I will encourage you all to look into these aspects as well. So wherever you feel your technology, your product, or your service is of great value, or could be of great value in bringing some semblance to the governance mechanism present in these countries, please go ahead, offer them. We are not being altruistic while we offer them. It's not that कि हमारा दिल बहुत बड़ा है और बड़े मन से हम उनको दे रहे हैं. It's not that. We have certain interests in mind, certain strategic interests in mind, and tomorrow, let's say, if there are certain important treaties to be passed, there are certain important agreements to be tabled in the United Nations, then these countries will come to fore, they will assist you, and they'll be compelled to stand by you. And that is where India needs to keep in mind. This is what India needs to keep in mind while we offer the cooperation. And of course, there could be a return that we could get. So if we are offering, let's say, a soft loan to these countries, or if we are offering a line of credit to these countries, they will buy it, and in exchange we can ask for letting some of our Indian players set up certain kind of operations in there. So it could be an Indian hospital chain, setting up a chain of hospitals in that particular country. It could be educational institutions which can set up a university in that country. And this is something that is not novel. We are already doing that. So IIT Madras, IIT Delhi have already moved overseas. We now have a campus in Abu Dhabi. We now have a campus in Tanzania. And then there are a few more campuses that could be coming up. Beyond that, there have already been some of the Indian private sector universities who have set up overseas campuses. But these campuses were only located in certain stable countries. So we've had a campus in the Middle East, in United Arab Emirates, and in the near future, our campuses will again migrate to some other countries. Again, coming back to the space sector, as you all know, we are right now picking up FDI from. We are open to pick up FDI from various countries, but we must also ensure that Indian domestic institutional investors, especially those that are located in the National Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange, they need to be sensitized how to bring in investments, how to bring in equity capital, how to bring in stocks for Indian private sector companies, especially working in the strategic fields. So companies that are working in the atomic sector, companies that would work eventually in the space sector or in aerospace and defense, we really do not have institutional funding mechanisms as of now. Now that needs to change. So just like the way you have sectoral funds for oil and gas sector, new energy sector, so on and so forth, you need to have sectoral or infrastructure sector. You need to have sectoral funds for aerospace, space and defense. Now these sectoral funds will be very important when it comes to raising domestic capital. We need not wait for JVs with other countries. We need not wait for any strategic cooperation coming in from Europe or North America, because things are going to get acrimonious with us, especially when India grows in ranks. As our economy grows by every $1 trillion every 18 months to 20 months or so, the way the world sees us is going to change quite drastically. And the kind of cooperation we've had from France, or let's say from Russia, or let's say from the United States, that is going to tremendously change our perception. We'll be seen with utmost respect, but we'll be also seen with a lot of caution. So countries that have been giving us a diesel electric submarine, France has been giving us the Scorpion for quite some time now. It won't give us that necessarily. So unless the French aerospace sector or the defense sector is wanting to have their capital shifted from Europe to India or any other country in the world, unless that is going to happen, they're not going to give us any technology. There won't be any TOT happen. So we'll have to build our own super carriers, which are already building it. We'll have to build our own diesel electric submarines that we have been importing all this while. We will have to ensure that there is enough money in the kitty to buy squadrons and squadrons of the 5th generation fighter aircrafts. We have enough money to sustain the Indian human spaceflight program. We may soon have the first test flight of Gaganyaan. The astronauts have already been, the names have been disclosed, their faces have been disclosed. But to sustain that kind of program is something where we will need a lot of capital. So ensuring availability of capital, ensuring that we have great control over the global money flows is something that is going to become very important in the next 5 years. So India in the next 5 years between 2024 and 29 will be very much different from what we saw earlier. I won't say we will be aggressive, but we will be very much assertive when talking about our interest. We will be assertive in the neighborhood. We've been accused of being big brothers for a very long time. We are not big brothers, and that is what we've said over the past 1 month or so. Our External Affairs Minister has said that India can't be a big brother. India can't be a bully. You can't name us a bully because we are the country that offers assistance, that it offers help in times of crisis. A big bully never does that. Okay, so we'll have to assertively thwart all the negative perceptions and connotations that come by us over the next 5 years. And closing the talk, I'll also talk about certain emerging technologies, especially AI. We've now had some announcements regarding AI that India is not going to allow generative AI that is being controlled by foreign entities to operate freely in this country. India will have really strong regulations on AI. There is a national AI mission that has been announced. And one thing is for sure, as we move towards 2047, the period that we call as Amrit Kal, we will also be, as a world, not just India, we will be encountering a world that is growing will progress in a gray zone, a world that will operate in a gray zone. A lot of technologies that are coming up or that will come up in the next 20-25 years, there's no regulation for these technologies. There's no international consensus on how to control these technologies in international realms. And that is going to create a lot of ideological conflict, a lot of kinetic and non-kinetic conflict amongst countries, because when you have such emerging technologies available to you in surplus, there are countries, there are global forces who would want to have a sway, a control over these gray zone technologies and use these gray zone technologies as weapons for global control. And that is the reason why India has shunned some of the generative AI companies to operate in India freely. And there is now regulation in place. And this is going to be a major issue even for the next 5 years. I don't see a solution happening. And there are great many projections that are being made. You've seen Elon Musk making statements about AI when he said that by 2029 you will have a sapient AI, an AI that will start making sense, which is very much similar to humans. It will perhaps in the next 5 years or so. So when you have such a weapon of mass destruction on the anvil, things do not look promising. During the First World War, that was the first war ever fought with airplanes, and airplanes had come just 10 years before the First World War. So in the first 5 years of the 20th century, you already had the aircraft given to the world, and the aircraft was right there as a war machine in the First World War. Number two, as the Second World War arose, you saw atomic energy being innovated, discovered, and being put into an application which was not exactly peaceful. So you saw the testing of nuclear weapons during the Second World War. And there is a projection that there might be a war on the anvil. The world, as we see conflicts happening in Israel, in the Levant region, we see conflict brewing in Eastern Europe. We see a conflict brewing in the South China Sea. We see a conflict brewing in Africa as well as in South Asia, in and around us. Things are not looking bright. And in such situation, when you have an emerging technology like AI, which can be a really destructive force, we have to look at it with great, really strong binoculars. We'll have to dissect it. We'll have to see through it, and we'll have to make sure that an AI or anything like AI, any emerging technology that is upcoming, it shouldn't be used by anyone to instigate a war and to win a war. So with that, I close my talk and I'm open to questions. So Suhas ji has a question. Okay, so he asked your assessment of success so far of GOI's Make in India program and the reasons behind. So, sir, the Make in India program, especially when it comes to low-hanging product, has been really good. You see a lot of traction, especially in terms of commercial electronics. You see a lot of traction in terms of mobile phones, which again is part of commercial electronics, but it has a specific segment to it. We made great headways in it. There was no specific policy in place. There were no incentives in place. And in the past 5 years, you saw something known as the production-linked incentive scheme that was being brought. Just yesterday also, there was a PLI, there was an incentive scheme announced for EV vehicles for anybody or for any entity who could raise up to 4,500 or 5,000 crores rupees to set up an EV plant. So incentives, tax holidays have been some of the hallmarks Make in India program in the past 5 years in particular. So it has been a success. There is a PLI for semiconductors that is in the works, and you saw some investments happening. These investments, some of the investments were thwarted. Investments could have happened much earlier, but there are forces at play who did not let it happen. One investment that I can particularly think of was that the Israeli company Tower Semiconductors, it wanted to set up its plant in Karnataka during the Basaraj Bommai government. Basaraj Bommai government also signed an MOU with them, but eventually Tower Semiconductors was out of nowhere, out of the blue, was acquired by Intel, and the entire pursuit of moving Tower Semiconductors or making Tower Semiconductors set up a plant in India was completely nullified by Intel. So there have been forces around who were inimical to certain strategic investments that some of overseas companies were wanting to make because they saw promise in us. Eventually, Tower is now moving into India 4 years down the line. This thwarting happened in 2020 or 2021. But yes, there are countries who are wanting to move. Semiconductor is another strategic area that we lacked in, and it becomes very important for us to not only have a 28 nanometer line, but also a fab line which could make semiconductors up to 4 nanometers or 2 nanometers. So 28 nanometers usually would go for consumer electronics. 2 nanometers would go for really strategic applications. You need a fab for gallium nitride, which is again very much important for strategic applications, so on and so forth. So all these blocks have been set up in the outgoing government, and we will start seeing some benefits in upcoming tenure. So we'll see the first big fabs coming up in Assam and in Gujarat very soon. So Make in India is making progress, but it will have to be sped up in the next 5 years. Thank you.